Assalamualaikum and a very good day. My name is AHMAD bin ARZMI and my supervisor is Dr. Siti Mariam binti Abdul Rahman. This is the presentation for my FYP1 proposal titled KLIA Airport Capacity Graphical User Interface Development. So let's get started. Now, the project summary. Now, there is an increase in air traffic that has caused airport capacity to become a limiting factor. Because of this, a system to monitor an airport's capacity becomes necessary. So this project aims to develop a graphical user interface for the capacity of the Kuala Lumpur International Airport, KLIA. Now, the chosen concept for the airport capacity for this project is the capacity of the runway. The objective is to create a graphical user interface that can be easily understood by people with little to technical knowledge of airport operations. The calculations for the capacity will be performed using formulations from reference materials. Introduction. Now, in the aviation industry, there is significant attention being paid to to the movement of aircraft, cargo, passengers, and ground vehicles. The term capacity can be defined as the number of people, vehicles, freight that can be handled at any given time. Now, the incorrect assessment of capacity can often lead to delays and congestions. In a typical airport, the capacity of the runway is often the main bottleneck. Now, literature review. R. Peterson, in his report titled Capacity Constraints for Air Traffic Flow Development, he said that the most important limiting factor for air traffic is found to be the runway's capacity. Now, Branko Bubalo, in his report titled Airport Capacity and Demand Calculations by Simulation, he said that he ran a simulation to calculate the capacity for the Brandenburg International Airport in Berlin. He said that he found that the practical capacity for the airport was found to be 76 flights per hour. Now, P.S. Sengutuvan, in his report titled Economics of Airport Capacity System in the Growing Demand of Air Traffic, he said that the measures that can be taken to manage existing airport capacities can be divided into short-term or long-term strategies. So short-term strategies basically taking advantage of better management tools or technologies to improve the flow of traffic. And long-term strategies are basically developing new infrastructures like new terminals or runway to cope with the existing demand. Now, Photios A. Kasigiannis, in his report titled Optimizing Airport Slot Allocation, Considering Flight Scheduling Flexibility and Total Airport Capacity Constraints, he made a comparison between low-cost carriers and full-service airlines, and he found that the airport capacity is related to the use of frequency as an entry deterrent strategy. He found that the low-cost carriers often hold an advantage as it is difficult to deter them from entry if an airport's capacity is high enough. Finally, Paolo Di Maschio, in his report titled Analytical Method for Calculating Sustainable Airport Capacity, he found that and he said that an analytical system to analyze an airport's capacity has been developed. It may be sufficient but not accurate as not all critical issues at an airport is considered. For more advanced simulation, the use of simulation model may be more appropriate. Now, there are four main approaches to calculating the capacity of an airport. First, we have the queuing model, which is a first come and first serve basis, an analytical model, which will be used in this project. An analytical model is the calculation by analyzing time intervals between aircraft. Next, we have the empirical approach, which is based on surveys, observations, and statistics. Finally, we have the simulation uh, approach, which is through the use of advanced software such as CMOD and ADSM. Now, problem statement. There have been numerous analyses done on airport capacity, but very few that is focused on KLIA. Hence, it is essential that KLIA can cope with the increasing demand for air travel as it is one of the busiest airports in Southeast Asia. There is also a lack of resources concerning KLIA's runway capacity. Now, the resources that are available can be difficult to understand by people with little technical knowledge of airport operations. So, to overcome this, we will develop a graphical user interface that can calculate the runway's capacity. Mm, Okay, the objective of this project is to adopt a formulation to calculate the runway capacity of KLIA and then to implement the formulation into a graphical user interface that can be easily understood by people with little to no technical knowledge of airport operations. Now, the scope and limitations of this project. Now, because of the movement control order MCO in place, it is impossible to visit the actual airport to gather real-time data on aircraft movements. So The calculations will be done based on existing available data. Now, the results may be inaccurate as the data may not be up to date, and the use of advanced simulation software is unavailable because said software is not available for commercial use. Now, the calculations and graphical user interface will be developed using MATLAB software. Why MATLAB? Because MATLAB is more familiar to students. We've studied MATLAB in other courses in the university, and also it has advanced features such as the ability to write calculation codes and to design graphical user interface. So it is suitable for this project. So the calculation methods will be based on formulations taken from source materials. Okay, we move on to methodology. Firstly, we require the following parameters for the airport. First, we need the standard deviation of the position of airborne aircraft, which is delta in seconds. Next, we need the probability of violation, PV, in percentage of the air traffic separations that is considered minimally acceptable or attainable. Next, we need a common approach path length, gamma, in miles. Next, we need the aircraft data, which includes the following: the aircraft type, which is divided into small, large, and heavy. We need the approach speed V, which is in miles per hour. We need the runway occupancy time, R, in seconds. We also need the percentage mix of each aircraft type for arrival and departure scenarios, respectively. Next, we need the aircraft separation data for different aircraft types for departure operations. For departure operations, it will be measured in seconds. And we need the same thing for arrival operations, but for arrival operations, it will be measured in miles. So this is an example of a case. So we have the standard deviation of the position of the airborne aircraft, gamma, that is 20 seconds. We have the probability of violation, PV, that is assumed to be 10%. The common approach path length is 6 miles. And this is the aircraft data that we have. So the approach path, here we have the, hold on. Here we have the aircraft type. Here we have the approach speed. And here we have the runway occupancy time. Here we have the arrival mix. And here we have the departure mix. So next we have the departure separation rules. As I mentioned earlier, this will be measured in seconds. So now the top of the table will be for the leading aircraft, and the left side of the table will be for the trailing aircraft. Okay, and this is the same thing for arrival separations, but it will be measured in miles. Again, we have for both the leading and trailing aircraft. So this is an example for an arrival case. Firstly, we have to calculate the inter-arrival time for each aircraft combination. Now, the equation used will be based on the following, depending on if the leading aircraft is slower or equal to the trailing aircraft, or if it's faster than the trailing aircraft. So we use either these two formulas, where delta ij is the minimum separation distance. For example, we have a leading large aircraft and a trailing small aircraft. We will use this formula. We will have 3 times 3600 y times 3600, because the unit was in miles per hour and we want that in seconds. Y3 because the leading for a leading large aircraft and a trailing small aircraft, the arrival separation rules is 3 miles. And we calculate that and we get 80 seconds. And oh yeah, I forgot to mention, we have 135 here. That is taken from here, the approach speed of the small aircraft, which is 135 miles per hour. Okay, that's going to be 80 seconds. And for a leading small aircraft and a trailing large aircraft, we will use this formula. So then we get 170 seconds. And we do the same thing for the other combination of aircraft, and we will get this matrix. Next, we will also need the arrival mix probability matrix. This is done by simply multiplying the probability of both aircraft types. So say for example we have a large aircraft and a small aircraft. So we simply multiply 0.45 and 0 multiply times 0.2. That is going to give us 0.09. And we simply do the same thing for the other aircraft combinations. Next, we need the inter-arrival buffer time that must be added for each case. Now, why do we need the buffer time? This is to ensure that the minimum separation minimum arrival time for each for the aircraft is maintained. So again, we have different cases if the leading aircraft is slower than or equals to the trailing aircraft, or if the hold on, this is wrong. This is supposed to be faster, or if the leading aircraft is faster than the trailing aircraft. So depending on the speeds of the combinations aircraft, we will use either of these two formulas. So the QV is the value for which the cumulative standard normal distribution has the value of 1 minus PV. So for example, uh, our probability of violation that was given is 10%. If we look at the normal distribution table, that corresponds to a value of 1.28. So we multiply 1.28 uh, times the standard deviation, which was given as 20 seconds over here, and then we get 26 seconds. So we do the same thing for the leading small aircraft and the trailing large aircraft. So and we found that we get negative 5 seconds. So the buffer time cannot be negative, so that has to be 0. And once we calculate for all the possible combinations, we get this buffer time matrix. And then we simply add that to the inter-arrival time that we previously calculated, and we get this buffer time matrix. So for example, say for leading large and trailing small, previously we got an 80 in the inter-arrival time matrix. So, and we calculate the buffer time to be 26 seconds. So we simply add that. Sorry. We simply add 80 plus 26, and that gives us 106 seconds. Next, the expected value of the inter-arrival time is calculated using the following formula, which is basically just the sum of the probability times the inter-arrival with buffer time. So we just add those together for each of the cases, and we get 151 seconds. Now we finally we calculate the airport capacity, which is determined using the following formula, which is we divide this value with divide. So I'm sorry. We divide 3600 seconds, which is equivalent to 1 hour, with this value, and we find we get for an arrival case we get 24 operations per hour. So next is a departure case. Departure case is basically easier because in a departure case the planes are already on the ground, so it's easier to manage them in terms of time. So again, we calculate the mixed probability for the different combinations of aircraft, similar to the arrival case earlier. So we get this table, and next we simply calculate the probability with the departure. I'm sorry, with the departure separation rules where we have earlier. So we just depending on the combination, we take the respective value from this table, and that is why we have 0.0225 times 90 plus 0.08225 times 90. We keep adding all of those, and in the end we get 77 seconds. So again, with the same thing, if we want to calculate the airport capacity, we divide 3600 with the value over here, and we get and for departures we get 47 operations per hour. Now, the expected results of this project, this is the proposed GUI designs. It will be divided into 5 different tabs. For the first tabs, we have the airport parameters. This is where the user enters the standard deviation. deviation, the probability of violation, the common approach path length, and this is the airport's data. For the second tab, this is the separation data for arrival and departure cases, respectively. So for arrival, we have miles. For departures, we have sorry. For departure, we have seconds. And then for the third tab will be the arrival matrices. So we have the separation time matrix, we have the mixed probability, we have the buffer time, and finally we have the inter-arrival time. For departure matrices, we only need one, which is the mixed probability, which is over here. And finally, the final tab is the final airport capacity. So this will display the capacity of the airport for arrival capacity and departure capacity, respectively, in terms of operations per hour. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for watching.